Feeling frustrated by the Ontario Disability Support Program? You're not alone. In the next few minutes, I'm pulling back the curtain on 10 hidden flaws that quietly drain your wallet, crush opportunity, and keep thousands trapped below the poverty line. From a shelter allowance stuck in the 1990s to clawbacks that turn every extra dollar into quicksand, these problems aren't just policy hiccups, they're life-altering roadblocks. But here's the twist. Buried inside each flaw is a leverage point, a pressure spot you can use to push for change or protect yourself right now. Curious which three-digit form decides your financial fate? Wondering how a generous 2.8% raise actually costs you money? Stick around because I'm mapping the maze and handing you the keys. If clarity is power, this video is your power-up. Trust me, by the end you'll grasp why the system fails and learn the exact questions and actions that can protect your income and well-being today. Ready to arm yourself with the facts, the hacks, and the action steps politicians hope you never learn. Then smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a truth bomb that could save you thousands. Let's turn confusion into confidence, starting now. Basic needs rates cement people in deep poverty. The province's own table shows that as of July 1, 2025, the maximum combined basic needs and shelter benefit for a single adult on ODSP rises to $1,408 per month, barely $16,900 a year. Meanwhile, the official market basket measure poverty line for a single person in even the cheapest Ontario regions now sits around $25,000. Advocates add that disability often pushes living costs 30% higher because of medications, mobility aids, and specialized diets. The result is a structural shortfall of roughly $10,000 to $12,000 every year before a single bill is paid. That gap forces recipients to rely on food banks, predatory lenders, or risky, under-the-table work just to survive. In other words, ODSP's core rate is not a safety net. It is a policy choice that institutionalizes poverty and limits every other life decision, from housing to health to employment readiness. Until the basic rate meets or at least approaches the poverty line, all other reforms are band-aids on a gaping wound. Shelter allowance bears no relation to real-world rent. ODSP allocates just $582 for shelter costs, an amount unchanged since 2018. Contrast that with CMHC's latest data. The average Ontario rent for a two-bedroom purpose-built apartment hit $1,447 in 2024, and one-bedroom units routinely top $1,300, even higher in mid-sized cities like London and Kingston. This leaves a monthly rent gap of $700 to $900 that must be carved out of the already inadequate basic needs portion. Recipients end up couch surfing, moving far from services, or using dangerous rooming houses where privacy and safety are afterthoughts. Landlords know the shelter cap, so many simply refuse ODSP tenants, worsening discrimination in an overheated market. The shelter allowance is supposed to stabilize housing. Instead, it drives homelessness and health crises that cost the system far more downstream. Earnings rules punish work instead of rewarding it. The government trumpeted a higher earnings exemption in 2023. Recipients may now earn up to $1,000 a month before deductions. Sounds generous until you read the fine print. Every dollar above that is clawed back at 75 cents, plus possible reductions in related benefits like drug coverage. For a person with episodic or part-time capacity, the effective marginal tax rate soars above 100% when transit, childcare, and equipment costs are factored in. Non-disabled spouses are still stuck with the old $200 threshold, creating family tension and discouraging dual employment. The policy tells disabled Ontarians that full-time, career-building work is too risky, while casual gig work barely moves them ahead. Economists call it a welfare wall, recipients call it a trap. Glacial application and review backlogs create crisis. Ombudsman cases show applicants waiting 18 to 24 months for an initial decision, with some forced to borrow or use food banks while medical evidence sits in an intake backlog. Reddit forums are full of people still in the queue from summer 2024. Even after approval, periodic medical reviews can arrive with little notice. If a family doctor has moved, benefits can be suspended while new paperwork is secured. These bureaucratic limbos aggravate anxiety, delay treatment, and can trigger homelessness. A support program cannot be effective when its gatekeeping process itself becomes a source of trauma. Disability-related and health supports are woefully underfunded. Advocacy analysis notes living with a disability costs about 30% more than average life in Ontario. Yet supplemental benefits, special diet allowance, medical travel, mobility device top-ups, have seen virtually no real increase in a decade. Many diets deemed medically necessary in 2009 now cost double in grocery aisles. The allowance hasn't kept pace. Result: recipients downgrade nutrition, skip physio sessions, or ration medications, compromising health and increasing long-term healthcare costs. When the safety net fails to cover disability costs, it's not a net, it's a sieve. Indexation to inflation sounds big, but delivers little. Since 2023, ODSP is tied to inflation. In practice, July 1, 2025 brings a 2.8% bump, about $38 for singles. That barely offsets last year's spike in rent or food, let alone retroactive losses from decades of freezes. The Consumer Price Index also ignores disability-specific expenses, meaning real purchasing power still erodes annually. Governments tout indexation as reform. Recipients see it as running up a down escalator, always one step behind rising costs. Stigma and ableist assumptions permeate the system. Research on ableism shows people with disabilities are routinely viewed as less capable or less worthy, a mindset that seeps into policy. ODSP forms ask intrusive questions. Frontline interactions can feel paternalistic. Prove you're disabled enough, then we'll decide what you deserve. This constant scrutiny undermines mental health and DEETers applicants. Recipients report avoiding medical reviews or job programs for fear of appearing too healthy and losing aid. A support system built on suspicion, rather than dignity, deepens social isolation and erodes trust in public institutions. Risk of clawbacks from the upcoming Canada Disability Benefit. The Federal Canada Disability Benefit, CDB, aims to lift disabled Canadians above poverty. Yet provincial documents have not ruled out treating the CDB as income, offsetting ODSP dollar for dollar. Advocacy groups warn that unless Ontario legislates full exemption, Ottawa's historic anti-poverty measure could simply subsidize provincial coffers, leaving recipients no better off. Fear of clawbacks clouds what should be a hopeful reform and underscores how fragile ODSP income security remains. Shrinking ancillary supports undermine self-sufficiency beyond the monthly check. ODSP once covered transportation to training, job search costs, and other employment supports. Budget 2020 documents show many of these subsidies are being scaled back or merged into new programs with tighter eligibility. Recipients struggling to attend physio, job interviews, or skill courses must now choose between paying transit fares or buying groceries. When supportive services vanish, the pathway of assistance narrows, perpetuating long-term dependency that costs everyone more. Bottom line, these 10 structural flaws interact like gears in a poverty machine, each one amplifying the harm of the next. Fixing a single cog won't do. ODSP requires a comprehensive overhaul that raises core rates, modernizes rules, and puts dignity at its center.